Hey everybody, welcome to Cold Ones for Caregivers. I'm Kyle Woody, founder and executive director of Jack's Caregiver Coalition, where our mission is to improve the way that guys think, feel, and act in their role as a cancer caregiver. On behalf of our entire campaign team, we're so grateful you're here with us today. And I'm excited that in a moment, I get to introduce you to our second campaign honoree, Mr. Logan Greene. But before I do that, let me update you on how the campaign is going. Our goal is to raise $30,000, which will make 40 more stories of caregiver support possible. And we've already raised 10,915. That's 36% of our goal. And that leaves us with 64% left to go. There are 5 ways that you can help us close that gap. First, visit our campaign page, jackscaregiverco.org/ColdOnes4CareGivers. And when you're on that page, there's a few things you can do. Number one, and the most effective thing, is to become a fundraiser. If you do that, you will have shipped to you a cool lapel pin, if I can get the camera to focus in on that. And you can also, when depending on how much you raise, super sweet shirts like I have on, among other things. I want to give a shout out to some fundraisers already. Allison Breininger, Mark Matson, Patty Jo Verdeja, Riley Moore, and Bree Ostrom have all already set up their campaign fundraising teams, and Patty Jo is still in the lead. Way to go, Patty Jo. Another thing you can do on that campaign page is sponsor the campaign. I want to give a shout out to our sponsors already, Gephardt Electric and Northland Concrete and Masonry at the gold level. And then at the silver level, we have Minnesota Oncology, Pate Bonding Incorporated, Transparent Financial, Alina Health, Virginia Piper Cancer Institute, and WSB. Thank you, sponsors, for making this possible. Another thing you can do is simply make a donation. I want to give a shout out to some recent donors, Mr. Aaron Hill, Mr. Paul Robinson, and Jake Bloomberg. Thank you all for your generosity. Thank you for helping us hit our goal. And then you can also volunteer. Our day of event on September 12th, where we start to wrap up the campaign, there'll be a lot of jobs, a lot of things that need to be done, and a lot of things we need help with. And so you can check out those opportunities on our webpage as well. And then lastly, you can also nominate a caregiver you know to win the Caregiver Cup. The Caregiver Cup is an annual award that Jax gives to the Caregiver of the Year. And so that trophy I just happen to have behind me, the Caregiver Cup. And then you can see here, in 2016, this was won by Dan Geider. 2017, Dustin Cesaric. 2018, Travis Robertson. And then last year, Mr. Richard Anderson won the Caregiver Cup. Who will it be this year? I can tell you already that we've received nominations for Mr. Dan Kramer, Mr. Mike McGarry, and Mr. Doug Dahlman. So we hope to receive some more nominations, and congratulations to the nominees so far. And now I'm excited to welcome Mr. Logan Greene.
Hey there.
Logan, how are you, man?
Pretty good, man. Just hanging out, loving the beautiful weather we have for a couple more weeks before it starts getting into fall. But enjoying the time outside, and yeah, I'm doing well today.
Yeah, you're wise to be outside. I'm still indoors here. So good move.
Well, the real reason is because my kids can't be quiet to save their life. So stick them inside. I'll go outside. We'll be good.
Yeah, well done. Well, I want to introduce everybody to you, Logan. Logan values persistence and commitment above all else. He's a 27-year-old swimming instructor with a background in theater and semi-pro football. He's also the proud father of 2, And in 2020, he became a caregiver when his wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. And then, while in active cancer treatment, she tested positive for COVID-19. So, wow, 2020 has been a heck of a year for a lot of folks. I would say you are experiencing as much or more change than most people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been very crazy. I mean, of course, it's funny to be online and watch people complain about 2020 and how rough it's been. And I'm like, really? You want me? You want to bet? You want to bet how bad it's been? And
Yeah.
I laugh a little bit because, in all honesty, this whole quarantine and shutdown has kind of been the best thing for our family. We were lucky enough; we were able to. I haven't had to work since March. I go back to work next week. Um, but our bills have been able to get paid through a couple different ways out there, and we've been able to be home and spend time with each other and make sure my wife is well cared for along with my kids. And um, it's one of those things where it's like, I know this has been such a struggle for so many families, but in all honesty, it's been the best thing for me and my family.
Yeah, well, that's great to hear.
Mhm.
And it's not a competition, right? Like
No,
who's got the crappiest situation. But it is, I think, does help sometimes to put things in perspective for some people
absolutely.
when they hear about what others have been going through. And so I want to start off with a question. Recently I asked you about what our mission at Jax means to you, and our mission statement explicitly is to improve the way that guys think, feel, and act in their role as a cancer caregiver.
Hmm.
But you responded that, quote, knowing how I am with my emotions, I needed a safe place to express those. I'm still 27, and a lot of guys my age don't get what I'm going through. Not only just the fact that my wife has cancer, but that my 3-year-old just puked all over the place at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, so that's that's a quick peek into the life of Logan Greene, a
yeah.
day in the life. And so my question is, what are those emotions that you need a place to express, and what is it about Jax that makes you feel safe to express them?
Um, I think a lot of guys in general just have a lot of anger built up, no matter where that's coming from. Doesn't it's Even if some guys are like, no, I'm not angry, my life is great, there still might be something that nobody else knows about that's just poking at you and itching. And I know where a lot of mine are, and I'm suppressing them a lot. And I'm not saying that's good nor bad. I think there's some times where we need to let those emotions out. And I think there's other times where you just get, hey, buck up, there's a job that needs to be done. And bottling it up in a space to take care of later, I think is necessary. Not all the time. And of course, we see lots of times when people bottle it up for so long and then it explodes out. And so a big thing with Jax is I'm able to look at other men that are dealing with similar emotions that I deal with on a regular basis, and I see they're okay. I see they're functioning. I see that they are able to push forward. Whether we talk about those emotions directly or not, I have a much better idea of what they're going through than some other guy that's unmarried, has a full-time job, doesn't have any kids, and has a couple girlfriends. Our mental and emotional states are going to be completely different. And again, that's okay. We don't all have to share the same emotions at all times. But Jax has been a really great place for me to recognize my emotions and deal with them and know that I'm not alone in them and that it's not just me that's feeling that. And I know we haven't had a lot of in-person stuff because of when I joined and when the shutdowns have all started. But even with the online stuff, when a guy on our caregiver group on Facebook shares that his wife just passed, I'm not there physically shedding tears with him, but I can emotionally feel for him, and I can see that, okay, this might be what happens in my life with our cancer journey, and he's making it, he's getting through it, and I know I can too. And it helps break down the fear. I think that was that's a big part of it. I live at a level 12 of anger and fear pretty much every single day, and I know that. And I know it comes from a couple different things in my life, not just the cancer. And I know that I need to deal with that. And Jax has given me a place, even if it's silently just looking at my phone, reading a story of another man that's going through a similar situation. I can deal with those emotions much more manageably. And so it doesn't end up exploding like Mentos and Coke. Like we can,
Yeah.
I can pursue my life a lot better as a normal human being and not have explosions all over the place.
Yeah. And so very wise of you, as a young man, to have that insight. And because I can tell you, I didn't as a younger person, and I did have some meltdowns. You know, the nuclear meltdown, and it wasn't pretty, and certainly I felt better afterwards, but it didn't have to look like that.
Yeah.
It could have been much better because I did it alone, and um, that's not at all. And I would say, in some of these groups, you might see some of that, what you would call a meltdown, or maybe, um, what might be scary to some people. But I can tell you, it's pretty cool when you do it in a safe group. And we say it isn't therapy, but it is therapeutic, and I believe that. So great. And I would add too, Logan, that you're part of creating that safe space, right? Like just your presence, with your experience, being who you are, um, that's critical, if not the most essential ingredient, to creating that space. And so kudos to you. And I
Thank
want to
you.
say kudos to you too for reaching out so early in your journey. I know you were given the news in January of this year, and we heard from you in January of this year.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons we made you an honoree for this campaign, because we wish that that was a story that happened way more often. We often hear from guys who have been sort of sitting on it, sort of ruminating, considering it, thinking, well, I don't know if this is for me.
Yeah.
And they sometimes they wait till things get really, really, really bad, and then reach out, which, it's not
It's
it
better
is
late
what
than
it is.
never.
Yeah, it's just not ideal, I think, in our minds. And then I often hear that there's regret, from those that they didn't reach out sooner. So kudos to you. Real quick, I'm going to take a break and just remind everybody why we're here. The 5 ways that they can join us on our mission to make 40 more stories of support like Allison's and Logan's and Tom's possible. Go to jackscaregiverco.org/ColdOnes4CareGivers. And there you can fundraise, you can sponsor, you can donate, you can volunteer, and then you can nominate a caregiver like Logan, for the Caregiver Cup. Maybe you'll be nominated, Mr. Greene. I know you're a competitive
Great.
guy. You must be if you're into football. So
Yeah.
hopefully get you nominated. And back to Logan here. I've got another question for you. Recently, and you've just alluded to this a little bit, but recently, after a program experience, you reported that you were, quote, able to appreciate your wife more and not get so frustrated about the little things, end quote. And that you've, quote, been at a fear level 12, and that you were able to let that 12 out in a healthy way. And so my question is, what is the end result of more appreciation and less frustration.
Mm.
Um, and what was healthy about the way that you dealt with that fear? And it makes me, I know this question just keeps
Yeah.
going, but um,
Yeah.
have you dealt with fear in unhealthy ways in the past?
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
and if so, what's the comparison? Like what does it look like to do that in a healthy way versus an unhealthy way in your mind?
yeah. I think to prompt it, the big part of appreciating my wife is I think us as guys, we look at a problem like, all right, can I fix it? Okay, I can't. So can this guy fix it? Okay, if he can't, can this guy fix it? Okay, let's get it fixed or let's buy a new one. Let's move on. I got better things to do. And when you look at a cancer thing, you're also, I think a lot of guys kind of approach it at the same thing. It's just like, okay, she's got cancer. What's the first step? Chemotherapy. All right, let's go. It's going to suck. I know it's going to suck, but we know what's going to happen at the end of it, where we should be getting better, because that's what happens when you take the steps to fix something. It's going to get better. And cancer is one of those things where you got to slow down because it might not work. And I have had somebody in my life that did pass from colon cancer when I was in my teenage years, who was very close to me. And he was ultimately allergic to the chemotherapy. And so like that step one didn't work because he was allergic. And I think even when I'm watching my wife deal with some of her side effects of the chemotherapy, there were times I'm just like, really? We just can't keep going. Like, I know you're dealing with this, but it's getting better. It's working. I know it sucks. I know you're in pain, but did I really know? Did I really understand what she was going through? And the answer is no, I really didn't, because I was just in the let's fix it and move on mode. I wasn't in the, hey, let's take this step day by day and understand that this is going to suck. And um, especially when in that specific moment, I, uh, when we were having that Thirsty Thursday, I got to think back of all the times and really reflect on my behavior and how I was kind of pushing, trying to rush this chemotherapy and like, okay, let's get it done. Let's get it moving forward faster, and realizing that that's not how this works. And I had to then think about how amazing my wife's body was and how it was responding to such a really, really rough drug and a really rough disease. And I think at the end of it, I was able to appreciate the work that her body is doing for her, and ultimately the work her body is doing for our kids, so that she can be around for them longer, so that she can be around for her and I to have a relationship longer. I think a big thing we try to suppress is our fear level of what's going to happen. Like, well, what's the worst case scenario here? Well, if my wife dies, that's kind of the worst case scenario. Um, Ultimately, that could happen if she's going on a run in a car and some guy hits. I mean, that the reality is that happens all the time, but we don't get a real face-to-face look at it very often. It's not very often you get to look at somebody dealing with the side effects of chemo and they can't even get up and walk to the bathroom by themselves. You have to carry them. Like that's a really firsthand look into what is this like. Or you end up taking care of your kids and cooking and cleaning and doing everything all by yourself while the wife can't even leave her room, and you're just shipping in popsicles every couple hours because you know she needs to hydrate, but she can't stomach water straight for too long because it's too much volume. And I think that fear level just keeps building, whether you're thinking about it or not. Well, in the midst of doing dishes, you're like, man, this would suck if I was the only person doing this all the time. I'm really glad that I took a lot of the stress off because I didn't have to work through a lot of this. And so I was fairly or stress free in that regard, but still having to think about, okay, how much would this suck if she wasn't here? How much would this suck if I had to do this all by myself? And having the time to look at that and see other men going through your worst case scenario and seeing that they're okay is really, really important. Not only just to say that, like, not just thinking, oh, well, I'm glad I don't have it that bad, but also understanding that, like, if he can do it, so can I, and it's okay. And taking that fear and owning it, as opposed to just kind of suppressing it.
Yeah, you're acknowledging it. You know it's there, and that takes courage.
I hope I got all the parts of that question. I think I did. Not sure.
You did a great job, and I really like the way that you talked about, um, the fix it mentality that a lot of us guys have, and it's certainly the way I was raised and what I was taught is, we're problem solvers. That's how we excel, and I had a coach, a mentor of mine, tell me that it strikes me that the work you're doing with Jax is very spiritual. And I was just kind of perplexed, like, well, we're not a church, and we don't talk about any particular religion, or we're open to anyone who comes to us. Um, so what do you mean spiritual? And he said, well, you're dealing oftentimes with problems that humans can't solve, and that people cannot fix, and so those are the things you're wrestling with, and that to him is what spirituality meant, that it's just bigger than us, right? It's these things are bigger than humans.
Absolutely.
And so it's because of people like you that show up, that we have the ability to help people just um, feel renewed. Because to me, that's another way of saying when you leave, you come into a program and your fear level is 12, and when Logan says that, he means you should be 0 to 10. Right?
Sorry.
Like you're over, you're screaming inside, and that's not a good place to be. And so when you come into that program at a 12 and you leave it at a 4 or whatever, there's a little bit of positive anxiety is not bad, right? Like a little bit doesn't hurt. But that to me is when I say renewal, like that's what I mean, like getting you back centered, feeling better. And then not only that, just the solace that if you are one of those people who are going through a really tough season, right? Like there's the it sounds like things are on looking up for you guys, and we just God, we hope it stays that way, right?
Yeah.
Like that's we're all rooting for you. But there are many in our community who are going through the winter, while some are going through the summers, and we just lift each other up and cheer each other on, and we, COVID or not, we're going to do it, right? Like we'll be on Facebook, we'll be on these like we're doing right now, from our homes, and someday soon, I'm optimistic we'll be able to do more in-person support type of stuff. So yeah. So anything else, Logan, that you feel compelled to just share with the community? Our vision is a community for guys who are caregivers, and that community is basically the people that I listed at the top of this show, right? Like the sponsors, the fundraisers, the donors, the volunteers. Like these are all people. Many of them are not caregivers, and never have been. Some of them are, but there's a lot of people. We're building this community so that number one, they understand what it is, what it means to be a caregiver, and then that they can respond and support those caregivers better, with more effective ways of supporting them. And so anything else that you might want to share with that community, it could be as simple as a thank you, or it might be, advice or insights.
One thing that kind of sticks out to in my head is when I think about just care in general, I kind of think about the care for my kids. And I have a very simple thought process to it where like parenting is really not that hard. If there's a problem, you take care of it. If kid's thirsty, you get them water and you take care of it. If they're hungry, you grab them food, they take care of it. If they need new shoes, you go to work, make money, buy them the shoes and take care of it. And I was stopped by one of my friends who was just like, hey, so what about the emotional side? And I thought about it, and a lot of the emotional side if you're just doing the care and you're taking care of things, a lot of times that emotional side comes through. So when all these people that are supporting us and they're doing the work, that emotional support is there for the people you're caring for. Even if you don't have to talk about all the fear that you're going through. If you don't have to with that specific person, you don't have to talk about the sadness or anything or feel sorrow, but just doing the work and caring for them, that is such a big emotional support for those people. And I think that's really important for a lot of guys to remember. It's like you don't have to cry over a cup of coffee, but you can still support each other just by doing the work. And I think that's a big thing a lot of guys need to be reminded of, is like you are an emotional stronghold in your relationship because you're caring for that person or you're caring for this group.
Yeah, and that's work, right? That's caring, that emotional side of it. That's not an infinite resource. There's you're pouring your heart into those children every day, into all your relationships, and so to your point, recognize that, and it sometimes is all you have to give, right? Like you just run out and your cup is empty, and that's okay, because even just the emotional part of just caring so much for somebody and watching them suffer is exhausting. And so that's why we see so many people just at extreme levels of chronic fatigue, and they may think, well, I'm not really doing that much, the doctors are doing this or the nurses are doing that. It's like, well, but they get to go home every night and just sleep, and they get paid to do this job, and this isn't, if something negative happens to this person, they aren't married to them.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a totally different thing. So thank you for sharing your wisdom with our community today and allowing us to shine a light on you. I want to make sure everyone knows this interview has been pretty short, but we've gone much deeper with Mr. Greene and some other interviews, and those will be released in the form of a blog and in the form of a podcast in the weeks ahead. And those will all be featured on our Cold Ones for Caregivers campaign page. They'll be linked to there, so you can check those out. And I also just want to again thank all of you watching. We're overwhelmed with gratitude that you chose to spend your valuable time with us today. Our main event is September 12th at 612 Brewery in Minneapolis from 1 to 3 p.m. We're going to have live music. We're going to have a silent auction that you could actually participate from remotely. So we're making all of this remote, so people have the option. If they want to come, great. If they want to visit from the safety of their home, that is also great. We'll have more stories of caregiver support. We'll have an award ceremony for the most successful fundraisers for the Caregiver Cup, among other things. And then just like caregiving, fundraising campaigns are a team sport. And so I want to close by thanking our entire team, our co-chairs, Bree Ostrom and Patty Jo Verdeja, our marketing chair, Riley Moore, our silent auction chair, Eva Verdeja, our virtual production crew, Chris Cloutier and Alan Christensen, and then our volunteer coordinator, Pat Klein. And so thank you to everybody for tuning in today. Have an awesome day. Take care.